Hello, I am Najee Weeby, and this is my final Knowledge Bundle presentation. To begin, we have the three synergies I will be talking about throughout my presentation today. The first will be the strategic importance of cosmos and the places where indigenous people lived. Then I'll be talking about the environmental structure they had. Then I'll be talking about finishing it off with the worldview of indigenous people. First off, the strategic importance of cosmos and the places indigenous people lived. From Module 1, Shell Mound was one of the areas we visited and first talked about, and they had a very smart civilization based on the evidence. They were able to understand cosmic travel, and it is shown by their dynamic landscape and ability to move. They had shelters on the ground, but the only way to live was because they understood that the sea levels would rise, and they would be able to move their belongings before the dunes submerged them. However, these dunes were not just ordinary dunes. They would be pointing towards the rising summer solstice and towards the setting winter solstice. The civilization realized how to keep track of everything by using the west-east as the daily axis and the north-south as the yearly axis. The cosmos comes in on how, one example is they are putting the oldest burial ground south and newest north, just like the water would move from the south to north. This is like the axis mundi and how the underworld is trying to take over the overworld because the water is moving south to north, taking over land at Shell Mound. They would also have summer solstice gatherings in this area, and it would bring back the balance with conflicts, bringing order to everyone and spreading lots of knowledge. This connects to Module 3 by how the Amazonian people would track summer solstices with their Pedra Pintada. They would gather a lot with people bringing items like drinks, and they'd have ceremonies which would allow for spreading of knowledge and cultures. These people also understood how the rapids worked and the cosmos. They would have most ceremonies calibrated with seasonal cycles, and they understood how liminal periods of time worked in the forest. Also, how spirits could give sicknesses like the Kawai, but can provide cures and great growth and prosperity. Furthermore, in Module 2, we learned a little bit about shamans and how they saw the other world from the plants of Virola. They would believe in how their souls would travel to the other world. And these are all about the cosmos and important places in the times of indigenous people. Now on to the next synergy, which is about the indigenous civilizations having very good environmental management and structure. For Module 2, the Mayans would have very hard seasons to deal with, where they would have consistent dry and wet seasons. Even with these dry and wet seasons, they still understood how to farm and take care of the environment. The Mayans would have challenges such as mud from the wet season, but resolved it by using bed farming methods, and it would allow them to still be productive in raising crops. Or they would use slash and burn from the dry seasons mineral soil. Then they would have to move and be dynamic, just like the civilization from Shell Mound. Furthermore, they would use Sena, which allowed for construction and keeping everyone healthy in their society. Another civilization that did natural farming techniques was the Amazonian, and they were irrigated by the second largest river. Instead of just thinking of the environment as things they believed, everything had personhood, and if I remember correctly, most indigenous civilizations did this technique of giving personhood to all the surroundings. This allowed indigenous civilizations to take care of environments and never disrespect their surroundings, such as some humans do, which lead to deforestation and other harmful actions on the forest. Overall, environmental management was a huge thing that the indigenous people valued, and they've took care of a lot. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the languages and the way people view the indigenous people. From Modules 7 and 8, we can tell that the indigenous people struggle to try to protect their lands and their languages all the time. The problem is because sometimes when a business owns a private land and indigenous people live there because it is sacred to them, they cannot do anything other than hope the businesses respect them, which does not work out most of the time based off of recent findings. Then, a lot of languages struggle because of colonialism in the past and recently, and how they used to be punished for speaking their own language and practicing their own religions, which ended up with many lost cultures and languages. However, the government does try its best sometimes to help them by having rules in public places where it is sacred, such as an example would be Modak National Forest or the Medicine Lake Highlands in Northern California, which is where a tribe has a sacred site, yet it is also for people to tour and enjoy the outdoors. This site has a lot of rules on trash pickup and certain limits on activities that many people do during the weeks. One of the specific rules they have is how each summer there is a special gathering for a sacred tradition by Native Americans, and they close off the area unless you are part of the practice, which is very well thought out by the reserve. Overall, federal government tries to protect the indigenous people as much as they can. Lastly, the indigenous people were similar in all these ways of the cosmos, environmental principles, and the experience of trying to keep their land, languages, and culture. In the end, they had sufficient ways of learning, teaching, and taking care of each other that we should value. We should take some tips from their environmental management, and we should just give more respect to their values and try to help out their cultures and languages instead of just ignoring them and their values, and try to keep them sustained on this planet as long as we can. Thank you.